From class politics in the capital
to more class politics in 18th century Europe,
we'll be discussing all things Hunger Games and, yes, even Stanley Kubrick this week on The Film Angle. Hello guys, and welcome to the brand new episode of The Film Angle. My name is Kris.
And I'm Alex.
And we are going highbrow and lowbrow, as always, today on the show. Not to put, none of these are lowbrow by any sense. We are talking, doing a retrospect on pretty much a movie series and book series that, like, circa 10 years ago was all that everybody in the YA sort of sphere was talking about, and that was The Hunger Games. And obviously, the prequel is now out, also based on the prequel book by Suzanne Collins, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. We've both seen it, Alex and me.
Yes.
And we're going to give our kind of thoughts on the whole series as a franchise.
We all watched them very quickly recently as well, didn't we? Because we both wanted to get back into that world before venturing back into... I don't know what the world's called. I guess it's just Earth. It doesn't really give you much more than that. Panem,
yes.
Panem.
Yes. Panem for now, Panem forever, Panem whatever. something like that. What kind of brought... this kind of... We didn't have to choose to do this. Like, nobody asked us to pick this series. What kind of thrusted... We both kind of similarly kind of wanted to return back to this world. I think that's a little bit of nostalgia because I think we were the sort of target audience when this whole thing was coming out originally. We were, in that YA sort of coming to the end of that. I was probably, my last years of school whenever Hunger Games was really amping up as a franchise. You probably were in university.
I was just starting. So I guess in a way I was probably just out of the demographic. However, I had read the books. So having read the books in the year or two prior to the film coming out, because I don't think I remember having to wait too long. I was very excited because I loved the books. I thought they were excellent.
When did the prequel book come out? Because that one missed me by.
Missed me as well. So I think the prequel book came out after the films had concluded, and I don't know. I heard it was good, and I guess judging from the film, must be the case. But I guess I was kind of out of that kind of YA world by then. That I didn't have, and like a prequel wasn't drawing me back into to go read those things because I felt that maybe it was just kind of a cash grab or something like that. And I just to bring me back to that YA world for however long it would have taken me to read the book. I don't know. I wasn't there for it. And I think we'll chat about it later as well. But I do think the final two films of the series did kind of like, I don't know, knock some of the energy out of me. And for the love of those, for the love of that series.
Like now or back then?
Back then, I remember like Hunger Games 1 and then Catching Fire. I've watched them so many times. I loved both those films. And then part 1 came out of Mockingjay, and I've seen part 1 and part 2 once, and I watched them again this time. Almost felt like I was watching them for the first time, just because I couldn't really remember them that well. And my feelings still stand. They should not have split that final book into two. There's a lot of standing around, and
there is a lot of
looking emotional in especially Mockingjay Part 1.
Yeah, and a lot of darkly lit rooms. It's quite interesting. For me, I got to revisit this franchise with my partner Lauren because she had never seen Hunger Games. This actually completely, for some reason, she was just like one of the only people in our age bracket at the time that had completely skipped by. So I actually was interesting to rewatch this because I obviously had a little bit of rose-tinted glasses here, and to actually see an adult objectively watch it for the first time was really interesting for me. And I was actually kind of, it felt very validating that she actually kind of enjoyed it similar to me.
They're really well done films.
They are really well done. And I think the thing I really enjoy about the franchise in general, I mean, the first exposure I had to Hunger Games wasn't the book first. I read the book after watching, all three books after watching the first film on when Netflix was like the brand new thing, and it was like one of the first big movies I had on there was the first
Oh,
Hunger Games.
nice, nice.
So I remember watching it a lot on there. Kind of reminds me of a lot of like when Game of Thrones started, and it had that real sort of scratchy, we don't know where this is going to go as a franchise energy to it. Like you watch the first Hunger Games, and you know it's big budget in terms of movies, but like for what the franchise turns out to be, it's quite low budget in comparison. It has much more of
Yes.
like they have to be a lot more discerning about what they put in front of the camera and how they use trickery to kind of get around some budgetary issues.
Yes, and the fact that they're straight up murdering kids
Yeah,
and how to get around that.
yeah,
And there's a lot of creative, but sometimes you kind of see it a little bit in that first film. But it kind of makes it feel quite, I don't know,
yeah.
it feels quite earnest.
But then you get that, and then Catching Fire comes along, and it's like, right, we're established now. Everybody is going to go see this thing, and it's like, what?
The camera will no longer shake.
The camera will no longer shake. Everything, yeah, the things that we couldn't show you before, like the Capitol itself,
Yeah.
costumes, makeup, everything, even just to the arena itself, is being money's been thrown at it, and this is what we want this thing to look like. And then you go to Mockingjay,
Fire
which
looks
is
okay now.
fire. Yeah, the fire in the first Hunger Games, and the chariot scene. Even though that is quite, I do love those chariot scenes in those first two movies, especially with that like iconic piece of music. Yeah, that looks like it was done in Photoshop. Yeah, but it is what it is. But yeah, and then you go to Mockingjay, which has more of a grim sort of both aesthetic and tone to it. So I really like the series because every single film feels like we're jumping sort of mini genres. Like they're all
Hmm.
feel like they're made by a different filmmaker, even though apart from the first one, Francis Lawrence directs all of them. So there is this sort of flexibility in the world to like sort of stretch our wings out and be artistically creative. And I think the prequel is pretty similar. It does something new, but yeah, I mean, have you got a favorite in the series, like excluding the prequel?
Yes, excluding the prequel, my favorite is the first one. It's always been the first one, and I wasn't sure when rewatching them again after having not seen them in so long. A lot of people always say the second one is the best.
I would agree with that still, but I get why you would like
It's
the first one.
close. It's
Yeah.
close, but there's something, and I don't know if it is the nostalgia playing a part of it, of being really excited to see how they were going to adapt the book, how much of the book they were going to adapt, because I don't think it was always a given that you would get like a straight adaptation of these kind of things, and we'd seen some pretty poor young adult adaptations, Divergent, that kind of stuff.
Well, yes, yeah.
Come to play.
They're answering this franchise, really, aren't they?
Yeah, but
Maze Runner is another one. Yeah.
Yes, which is I remember thinking it was okay. I never really got into Maze Runner, but I still thought that first film was excellent, and I feel like it's one of those films that it is battling with its limitations, but it has a brilliant cast. It's really well shot for the most part. I really like the shaky cam personally. I think it really kind of gives a kind of this. It really gives an awe of terror. I don't know.
Yeah.
The whole world feels a little bit more real when it feels like it's an actual camera, and it feels dirty and grimy and grey and horrible. And I just, all the films in general have their morals in the right place. But in that first Hunger Games film, when Rue dies, and you see you see her district start to riot over kind of how emotional that moment is. It really gets me every time. I don't know what it is about that riot scene in particular, but none of the scenes of kind of rioting and liberation and revolution quite get me like the first film does. And it's only a tiny 1% of that film compared to how much it takes up the time of the other films. But
sure, I think that's a strength of all the franchise, really. I think it does Rebellion very well, and I think it does a really, really good job at introducing young people to these bigger themes that exist in our own world and our own history, are going on in our world right now. I mean, so no matter when you watch these films, it'll always be relevant to whatever is going on. It really captures the sort of malicious, sort of non-intentional, but like it's in our human nature just to kind of carry these things out over and over again, and even just how kind of complacent we can get within our own, and more, severe patriotism can muddy what we think of other people and how we see other people as human beings. So yeah, it still runs really well today. There is the shaky cam in the first film. I do agree. I think it works sometimes. I think they do it a little bit too much, and I think it is, again, that limitations, and it comes through as that is the reason why. But the scene whenever they first enter the arena and they take away like all sort of real world audio, so it just kind of captures. It's just literally like a dull drum beat in the background, and the sound of people breathing and the franticness of what's going on in that scene, and like that is when the shaky cam really, really worked. It added to like the chaotic brutality of that sequence. So I get it there, but Catching Fire, yeah, go for it.
Sorry, I was also going to say, just in reference to that scene as well, it is the only film where it is actual children in the Hunger Games as well, because obviously in the second one it's the Quarter Quell, and they bring back tributes from the past, and obviously some of them are more older than others, so I think there's an element they do, some of them really old. They do a really good job of kind of, I don't know, even when they are trying to dehumanize certain sections of the group, when it comes to their time, it's really good at being like, oh shit, they are just kids, and they're all figuring out their own way of trying to stay alive in this, the same as our kind of main characters, because you feel like the main characters have the moral superiority here, but they're all just battling in one way or another, trying to figure out what's the best way for me to get out of here alive. And I think it does a really good job of kind of like showing the horrors of that.
I think that's really I think that's clever, and I think it does show the horrors of that. I think the way the Capitol in general use sort of music and pageantry to kind of, as this sort of veneer. I mean, everybody is so garishly dressed in this city, and even especially the first movie. I think they were the costume department definitely found its strive by movie number 2, as opposed to 1. But all of this sort of pomp and the American Idolness of, especially in Catching Fire, the way they present people, like it's the Graham Norton show or like any big TV talk show, they kind of parade these people in front, and it's quite entertaining to watch, but it is so dehumanizing also. And I really, those are the parts of the movies that I really like, and I miss when I watch Mockingjay, but I know I get something completely different out of Mockingjay. And there were the 2 movies I don't know for you, but although they were the most recent, I kind of forgotten them most out of the whole series.
Yeah, and the thing is, they are well done, and they would be better as one film, I think. I know they cover a lot of things, but even like a 2.5, 3-hour film, I think would be better than the kind of 2.5-hour films that we got. But yeah, I think the whole series has its morals in the right place, and it looks at the audience and goes, we know you want more Hunger Games, but like you're missing the point. Like you're fully missing the point. And this
exactly, because we turn into the Capitol, then, don't we?
Yeah. This is about getting out of a bad place, and how kind of revolutions are grey and all this kind of stuff. It feels like it wanted, like Rogue One feels like it wanted to be this. And I didn't realize just how well
people are going to come after you.
Yeah, but they did. The Hunger Games did this so well in kind of pitching this kind of rebellion and being like, how far can you rebel before you become the Empire, essentially? And I think it's a really good of kind of, the whole metaphor of kind of the way things kind of change, but it's just a big wheel and all this kind of stuff. And
I think they do a really good job in Mockingjay bleeding that in. They bleed that in very slowly in those 2 films, I think. Enough for, as an older, I've seen this movie before, so I can see like the manipulation early with Julianne Moore's character in the background, and how that, we can see where this is going. But I can imagine a younger audience who maybe are new to these sort of themes, the realization of the inherent evilness sort of reciprocated in the rebellion, might not catch up to them till the part 2 movie. So it works really well.
It is good, and there are obviously elements, like you said, the pomp and stuff that you kind of love in the first 2 films.
Oh yeah, Stanley Tucci,
TV show
really
nature.
fun.
I was about to say, at least he pops up for a little something. But I must say, M laughed at me because every time Stanley Tucci popped up, I just laughed. Before he even said anything, I just laughed. I don't know what it is.
He is so
He's having
good.
so
It's that
much
cheeky
fun.
smile. Yeah.
It's just, he's so stupid in these films that I love it. I love how stupid it all is. It's great.
Lauren got a real kick out of Toby Jones being in the first movie, or the lack of Toby Jones. Like he's like in every scene with Stanley Tucci, but he's not allowed to speak.
Yes, yeah, he kind of nods along and stuff like that.
He's got a fun wig, and that's about it.
They give you the they pop in every now and then to give you the kind of context behind certain things, because it's all first person in the book, so everything is, you're in Katniss's brain, but obviously you don't get to do that. Another thing, you know, having now started talking about Katniss, it's really interesting to see how kind of Jennifer Lawrence's own life kind of parallels some of the, especially from the first two films.
Okay, go
you know,
on.
she was this kind of like nobody in an indie film who was kind of plucked to be this
Winter's Bone was her first
Winter's
movie.
Bone, yeah. And then all of a sudden she's in the Hunger Games films, and she is like an A-list star. Like, you look at these films now, you think, oh my god, what a cast! They've got Jennifer Lawrence, but at the time nobody knew who she was. And you just think, like, her kind of life must have changed in the same way Katniss's did, with all the kind of craziness that must have surrounded her after being in that first film. Only that first film, though. I think I can't say 3 and 4 probably replicate her life in any way, except that she did disappear for a little bit, because I think she realized everybody had gone a little too crazy for her, and the backlash had started. But no, I mean the whole cast of these films, it's insane, some of the people they got on here when you think about it, and it carries on in the prequel film as well. But you know, when you think Jennifer Lawrence, Woody Harrelson, Julianne Moore, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Donald Sutherland, Jeffrey Wright, Stanley Tucci. These guys are great. And then you start getting like little people pop up, like Mahershala Ali pops up.
Yeah,
like, he's a bloody star now. I couldn't even remember he was in this film.
This is pre-Moonlight.
Definitely in 3
Sam
and 4.
Claflin before he kind of got big and everything. Yeah.
3 and 4, you can definitely tell Hunger Games was the biggest film, biggest TV show on at that time. Gwendolyn Christie pops up.
Game of Thrones, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, Natalie Dormer's in there and stuff. You just think like, okay, yeah, all right. Everybody's watching Game of Thrones right now.
Yeah, it's 2014, season 4. Joffrey's just died. Oh, sorry, spoiler alert.
They get together, kind of the TV crew is like a crew of like TV's finest at the time, because you've got obviously your Game of Thrones, you've got what's his name from Daredevil, Foggy.
Yes.
I want to give him his real name. Eldon Henson, Wes Chatham from The Expanse. You just think like, TV's greatest right there.
Yeah, or soon to be TV's greatest. Even the dad from Stranger Things is in this in this crew.
He is, isn't he? Yeah.
He doesn't say anything. He's just in the background, and he looks like the dad from Stranger Things, and it's really disturbing watching it through a modern lens. And he's like one of the first to die. He's just like this. Yeah, it's strange. It's like, so he brought somebody's dad with him. I think Jennifer Lawrence, you can't really picture the franchise without her. I know it's because she's sort of, but she is so good in this. And do you know who stood out to me even more this time, Alex, was Josh Hutcherson. I thought, especially just I think he's great from the start, but as the movies go on, I think he's kind of out acting most people in scenes with him. I think he is incredible in this film, and I kind of really forget how great he is as a performer, and Five Nights at Freddy's, really cemented that. No, I'm kidding. Although he is the best part of that movie too, but I think he is somebody who kind of, he's been dealt a bit of a bad hand post Hunger Games, because I think he is really good.
Yeah, he is really good in this, and it probably comes down to the fact of, like, because at the time it was all about the love triangle that happens in all the kind of YA fiction, and obviously
the weakest part of the franchise, Gale, is as dull as dishwater.
It is weak, but I don't think it feels too. I felt like the books felt more wrapped up in it, and I think the films did a good thing of being like, at the end of the day, like, there's more important things. I mean, every now and then there's a little bit too much, like, I'm not going to do the rebellion if I can't be with you. And you're like, Gale,
Yeah.
shut the hell up.
Yeah, and it's like,
well, it is more the other way around. Gale's like the least empathetic person in the world. She's just like,
yes,
why are you pining over him? He's like, kids die, and he's like, for the rebellion, I guess. I don't care.
yeah. This is war, yeah. But he's also got no personality. He's just like, these are the conversations he has from movie 1 to movie 4. So, every time he enters the frame, you sigh, your body droops a little bit, and we're like, okay, here we go, 2 minutes of this.
He's so uninteresting, and maybe that is a credit to Josh Hutcherson. That Peter is more interesting. I remember when I was reading the books, thinking that if I was to go back and be like, oh, I ship them together, I think I wanted Katniss to end up with Gale, but then by the end, you're like, whoa, no, screw Gale.
Yeah, did you just want to be the contrarian at the time or something?
Yeah. Whereas this time, I was like, less interested in who she would end up with, but it was kind of more glaringly obvious that like Peter's a good guy, though he does get a little too wrapped up in the fact of like the love story in the first film being fake, and him being like, well, I didn't think it was fake. We were just trying to survive, mate. We were just trying to survive. Just bugger off. Wet blanket.
The first book is so like the first film is so loyal to the book, to almost a kind of a self-damning way. The little details I think about, like why we had to include that Peter was really good at, Josh Hutcherson's character was so good at decorating, and I think you're thinking of it the same in the arena that I'm thinking of, where she shows up and he's being disguised fully. I mean, we've seen the meme, everybody's seen the memes online of him fully disguised as a rock.
Yeah.
I mean, so many questions that brings up. Where did he get the materials? I mean, where was he going to pee? Where was he going to eat? That sort of stuff. But also just the visual gag and juxtaposition of what comes before, and just a hard cut to him lying on the ground. It's hilarious. I mean, it was funny. We had a laugh when we saw that again.
Yeah. No, he just wants to bake bread.
Yeah, and that's why he's so strong, because he throws sacks in the bakery.
It is a little bit. It is. They
could have made up something else for that.
I wonder if there's any other bakers who kind of agree, like, yeah, man, I'm ripped because I'm throwing bags of flour.
But you know what?
I'd be the fattest baker in the world if I was a baker, because I love bread. So
you'd just be a doughboy, wouldn't you?
I'd just be eating bread the whole time. Don't matter how many sacks of flour I throw around. If I'm eating like my weight in bread each day, yeah.
Yeah, when you threw out bread for her in the street, would you even eat that? I mean, I was a muddy bread. I was a wet bread.
I mean, if you're that hungry, Chris, yes. Spoken like a true capital man right there.
I know, savages. Mockingjay Part 2, I think, just final point on the franchise as a whole, I think that's the one that kind of took me by surprise. I think I must have not seen the whole movie, because post all, like, when they stormed the city as like a small sort of guerrilla group, it all kind of got blurry for me. So I forgot how scary this last movie is. I know I'm talking not from me. I mean, I'm talking from the perspective of a 12-year-old going to see a 12 certificate film. There is some creepy stuff, especially when they go down to the sewers. And I didn't realize there was going to be like these. If we've seen The Descent, or anybody who knows Gollum, will know this sort of creature that there's thousands of these like sewer creatures that descend on them in like pitch black scenes that are like, it feels like you're watching Alien. For about 20 minutes, and they're like, flipping heck, this film gets really grisly at times.
Yeah, and it's a massive downer as well.
It is a downer.
Like, it's such a downer film, and I think of that sequence.
But I like it for that,
because what's Sam Claflin's character name in this?
Oh, Finn.
Finn, that's it. Yeah, and he's really good at fighting underwater.
He's got a trident. Yes.
That was his like main skill, was fighting underwater. Like, how'd you know that? Like, how'd you find that bit out?
He was the trident guy. Yeah, and I thought, and he got married the day before as well.
Yeah, so irresponsible for him to go along. Can I just say, after fighting his way to get back to the girl he loves, who was an ex-tribute as well, and is not altogether quite there because of the the obvious trauma that came with it. another thing the films do really well is capturing that trauma. But he then dies, and then you realise it was all kind of for nothing because they were 5 minutes. And they were about to storm the capital anyway, so they were going to win the war. And
he's so likable. He's really likable in these movies too.
He's really nice, isn't he? So
yeah,
nice.
He's a nice boy.
He's such a nice guy.
Have you seen The Nightingale?
On his back.
He's Sam Claflin. Just a shout out to him because I think he is one of the most underrated British actors in general. I think he is a class act, and I think he is so underrated. I watched him in The Nightingale a couple of years ago, where he plays an absolute bastard, like one of the most horrible men I'd ever seen in a film, and does it so well, like literally top 10 villains of all time. And the range that guy has, I think he's more than the Me Before You guy. Let's just put it that way.
Okay, I haven't seen The Nightingale, but I did hear good things. I didn't actually realize he was in it, so that is interesting. But yeah, it is his death is kind of sad, but then also because the film concludes almost like 10-20 minutes later, it feels like the most wasteful death.
Just hold on a little bit longer.
It's like if you just waited 5 minutes. Oh man, it almost warrants that final film a bit pointless, but then also you could say things like that about like the first Indiana Jones. So you just kind of go with the
It's always hard to wrap these things up,
overcoming things. But yeah, such a downer because obviously it doesn't really have a particularly happy ending. Like they storm the Capitol, but you know the leader, Old Coin, played by Julianne Moore, wants to restart the Hunger Games. And Katniss obviously says yes just to get her on side so she can, blindly shoot her with an arrow, big surprise without her seeing it come. And then obviously Katniss loses her sister, which was the whole point these films kicked off in the first place. Katniss was never trying to be a revolutionary icon or anything like that. She was just trying to save her sister's life. And then, full circle, the thing she kicks off by doing that obviously ends in the death of her sister anyway.
If she held on a few seconds too, that would have been great.
Yeah, she was almost used as a weapon, wasn't she? I think.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
It was. Yeah, so it's quite a sad ending. It's like, yep, we won, but at what cost? And will this kind of just recycle into the same old stuff? And then Katniss and Peter go off to live their very kind of traumatic, PTSD lives following it. Yeah, okay.
They can live their sad emo lives for the rest of this.
And I know, like, it's a nice little. They have kids at the end and stuff, but you're a little bit like,
yeah. Pete has slightly longer hair.
Yeah, didn't do the Harry Potter thing of like, I'm naming my child Effie
Dumbledore.
Effie Plutarch Heavensby Hamish Abernathy.
Oh man, yeah. I think overall it's a satisfying end to the series. For me, I quite like the way it just goes grim, and I think for a franchise like that, like you wouldn't get that now. I think you wouldn't get that now. I think that was kind of the last time maybe a kid, a teenager series that wouldn't be afraid to do that unless they just completely
I kind of forgot that it had, to be honest with you. So maybe, I don't know. Yeah, it does feel pretty ballsy to do that when other, I know Harry Potter concluded with a lot of deaths, but it just kind of felt like they needed some shock in that series rather than anything else. But it is nice to see that Suzanne Collins, as a young adult writer, has not become more problematic as the years have gone on.
We all know what and who you're referring to. We can move on.
We can still watch and read Hunger Games without feeling bad.
Folks, draw your own conclusions. So fast forward to 2023 or 2024 for us, because that's when we've seen it. So the Hunger Games, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which actually takes 64 years, place 64 years before the events of the Hunger Games. So this is set during. This is set during what is it? The 5th Hunger Games?
No, I think it's the 10th.
Oh, it's that far on, is it? Okay,
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, because that makes sense because it's the Quarter Quell in Catching Fire, which is 75th Hunger Games. So it'll be 10 years. Be like 10 years before that.
Yes. Which does end up making Snow like mid to late 80s if we're going off that logic. In the
Yes.
Hunger Games films, which I know Donald Sutherland's old, but he doesn't look that. I don't know. Does he look that old in those films?
Who knows? I kind of
We
like
haven't mentioned him. Do you like him? Do you like? I love Donald
I
Sutherland.
think he
He's
is
great.
deliciously evil in the Hunger Games
Yeah.
series. I think he's having loads of fun, and that cheeky, devilish grin on his face, scene to scene, is really fun to watch.
Yes. Cool. Thought we should chat him out.
Yeah, he is awesome. He is awesome in that film. He's still going.
Yeah, good.
I think there's a movie. I think there's a
family.
movie a couple of months ago. So Francis Lawrence is back directing this again after doing Catching Fire and the Mockingjay films, and again, I'm quite surprised. I'm just so interested to see what he does from a directorial standpoint. Like, what way is this film going to look? And all credit to him. Like, this movie looks different to the rest of the movies. Like, he goes for a different visual flair each time he returns to this material.
Yes, yeah, definitely. It definitely feels, and it's good as well. It feels different, doesn't it? I think there is the camera's definitely slightly. It's got more of like a weird.
It's got more of a scope to it.
It's definitely got some. Yeah. So I mean, that could just be kind of. I don't know how technology is advanced. I don't know, but
there's the most digital of the movies. 100%.
Definitely, and then tonally, I feel like we get a slight tone change as well, which I guess is nice. It kind of
makes sense.
It allows it to have its own life, whilst also kind of looking and sound like a Hunger Games film. I ended up renting this one to stream because I didn't go see it in the cinema, and
me too.
I'm kind of sad that I didn't, but I think I don't know if we mentioned it too much, but kind of like my energy dropped after 3 and 4 of the last films, mainly 3, because I just think any kind of love I had for that series, it felt like all of a sudden it was like this split film, a cash grab. Energy really died down, and it was quite a slow trundle to the finish line, I thought, after Catching Fire. So like I was like, oh yeah, I'm interested to see a new Hunger Games. Obviously I hadn't read the book, so I didn't have that kind of anticipation for it. But I kind of feel a bit bad that I didn't go see it opening week or something, because
I think also because the length of it's 157 minutes long. That's a pretty chunky movie, and I would have benefited from being in that sort of chamber and in that sort of mind space of being in a cinema. I think it's a good looking movie too. I think it's really nicely shot.
Absolutely. And yeah, no, I was happy to, after doing our little mini marathon of the Hunger Games films, I was happy to be back in the world, and I was quite excited to watch it. So yeah, I came out of it. I really, really like this film. I don't love it, not like the first or second Hunger Games, but I think it did a really good job of kind of showing you a different side, and it gives you a bit more of the history of the Hunger Games, of the capital, and then I guess most importantly, gives you this kind of origin story for Coriolanus Snow, who's played by Tom Blythe this time, and his kind of crawling up the social ladder within the capital, and I guess his kind of Anakin Skywalker descent to evil as well.
And also has a similarity to parallel to a character we're going to talk about later on as well, I think. I think Tom Blythe is probably my favorite thing about this film. I'd seen him. He used to be in a lot of television. Was he in Game of Thrones at a point?
Oh, I don't actually know.
I think I've seen. He was kind of like a typecast child actor who could play like the sniveling, complacent British kid in things, like in period pieces. If I'm right.
Oh,
and he's sort of had a bit of a glow up since. He is great in this movie. I think for a YA project again. I think it handles grays in people in terms of how they can change and adapt. We're watching the downfall from somebody who, I think objectively is a good person from the beginning of this film, and seeing how they change and morph through this film, and kind of in a complex way that's not exactly as linear as I expected it to be. My problem with the film is the tonal change a little bit. It took me a while to kind of work the movie out. I think I was spending a lot of time feeling this new version of Pan Am, this older version of Pan Am. The aesthetic is completely different. It's if you've ever played like the BioShock video games or any gamers
Mm.
out there, it has this sort of like steampunk mechanicals, but turn of the century sort of feeling to it. It's kind of like a mixture of eras and our own world kind of put together. And that's quite enjoyable. And also there's some interesting character choices with, I think, Viola Davis. I actually quite enjoy her in this movie playing Dr. Volumnia Gall. Um,
Mm.
who is one of the game makers, and she's hamming it up, and
She's really hamming it up in a
she's
good
really
way.
hamming it up, and you're just kind of feeling this world out and kind of getting used to it. And I think anyone who sees this will agree. I think this movie is probably going to be more successful in a second watch, just on purely on that basis. And I think maybe the games in this are not as bad, because it's against what the topic of these movies in general, but I mean, it's kind of the pleasure of these movies if we like to see the games too, especially those first two films. Those were the event of seeing them, and I think the game in this one is maybe just not as quite as interesting,
Mm.
in terms of I'm glad that it's kind of over and done with in the first half of the movie,
Yes.
and it turns into something else, and I think it becomes a little bit more interesting after that.
And it's
Um,
quite nice because I was kind of expecting it just to revolve around the Hunger Games. And it
mm,
was quite nice, that it starts so fast into the film. And I thought, oh,
yeah, we got a
okay,
lot of
this
movie
is
left
this
here.
is going to be over and done with within, by the halfway point of the film. So that makes it more interesting. It is
I
also the
expected it
Hunger
almost to be
Games.
like a second game come up later on in the movie or something. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I don't know why I didn't think that, but yeah, it would have made
yeah,
sense. But it is the verge of the Hunger Games becoming interesting. It is interesting that the film takes, or the story of the film takes that route of like, to begin with, these games were just a way to show kids killing each other. There wasn't the spectacle around it. It does fall into that prequel trap of, all of a sudden old Coriolanus Snow comes up with all the ways to make it more interesting, which are all the things we now know to be the Hunger Games. There's a few little contrivances like that where you're like, okay, it's not as bad as like the Han Solo, you're by yourself, we'll call you Han Solo line in Solo, but it's borderline there. There's a couple of
that's so
moments
terrible. Don't
picking
bring
up
me.
a potato and being like, "Oh, Katniss. I like Katniss, right?"
Yeah, yeah, that was a little bit overt. I think, yeah, it has those trappings, not as much as I expected it to have. I think it really does
No,
want
not
to.
too bad.
It does want to be its own thing, and I think it is as separate to the first Hunger Games film as the Mockingjay movies are to the first film. I think even more so, and I think that's just the right tone. What did you think of? Because this is kind of an interesting topic point for both of us to talk about, is the music. I think because we both didn't expect this to be as music heavy, especially country of all things.
Yes, took me by surprise to the point where this was a moment I was glad I wasn't in the cinema, because when Rachel Zegler starts singing, and it's nothing to do with her singing
Well,
or
her singing's amazing.
yeah,
Yeah,
she's really good in this.
she is.
But
Yeah,
like the music took me back quite a bit, that I kind of like laughed when
yeah.
she first started singing, because I wasn't expecting it, I think. And I think I was like, oh god. And then more music happens, and you're like, oh my god, Hunger Games the musical much. And then more
Mm.
singing happens, and
I
you go,
warmed into it.
I'm actually quite enjoying this now. This
Mm.
kind of works, and it works for the
And
character, and
using
it's
some
working
real
for the
world
story.
songs from our own media, like from our
Mm,
like real country songs from our world, which is quite an interesting choice. But like changing the lyrics, obviously.
yeah.
Um, I forget it's that song that she plays when she is kind of like. This is the first. So Coriolanus comes up with the idea to televise Hunger Games. Up until this point, it was just like an event that happened on the background, and people kind of knew it was going on, and he kind of brought the ideas to kind of make it this big thing, this whole American Idol sort of
Mm,
style experience. And I really, really, really enjoyed watching the humble beginnings of what that looked like as a show, as an experience.
yes.
Kind of it had that 1950s that we have a big 50s CRT screen on the background. We're in a small televised studio. Jason Schwartzman is playing the character, that sort of Stanley Tucci character this time as the TV presenter, and we're having dial in phone calls of people putting in their votes. I really liked how scratchy and how kind of non-perfect that event was. Like, it felt like a big rehearsal for what was coming years to come and what would be refined. I thought that's a really cool piece of world building that they really didn't have to do. But when she sings on the TV show, as almost like a self-help propaganda, where she uses the lyrics and it's emotionally manipulating the audience, and we get that in like Catching Fire obviously too. But I thought that was really, really cool. That's when the music kind of like worked for me, is whenever I had a little bit of a purpose to it like that.
Yes.
But also, it sounds good too. It's nice.
It hits the right emotional beats at the right times, and I definitely wouldn't laugh at that first song. Going into it knowing now, like if I was to watch it again,
it is disarming.
Yeah. I think even the fact that Rachel Zegler's got this very southern accent again is like completely more out there than anything you've seen in the Hunger Games so far. Like, I don't feel like anybody puts on a crazy accent, and that's
not
crazy, but it's strong. Nobody puts on a ridiculously strong accent.
She pulls it off.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying she doesn't. It's just you're taken back by like, wow, strong accent. What is happening? And like, you don't think, and they kind of do talk about District 12 and how she's not really from District 12. Because at first I was like, nobody in District 12 we've heard so far sounds like this. Why does she sound like this? So they do have a whole story reason for it, but there are moments like that. And again, it might just be from watching them all in quick succession where you're just like, whoa, this is different. But again, I thought Rachel Zegler was great. I thought she was really, really good in this.
I quite like her character Lucy Gray.
Baird.
So we get the Hanging Tree song, which is like, if you watch the Mockingjay movies, it's so hard to get that song out of your head for weeks and weeks and weeks. I'm just like humming it all the time now and again. But this song resurfaces here. So she's obviously the author of that song.
So that come in as soon as a few more songs came in. I was like, oh, okay, she's gonna write the song.
Yeah, and I'm like, I find it interesting from like an audience point of view, but like they never in the original Hunger Games movies, because I don't know if Suzanne Collins kind of had that in mind for the characters. But we don't really see Snow in those films sort of react to that piece, because that's used as propaganda against the Capitol.
The song is definitely in the books, like those lyrics and everything. They're definitely in there.
But what I'm saying is, was that originally intended to be placed?
Oh,
in the prequel?
I see.
So because obviously now you have this direct correlation with the song and Snow. So Snow is an old man hearing the song that his former like lover, his beloved used to play or sing, and now being used as a propaganda piece against him. I thought that was quite thought-provoking and interesting, although it doesn't come to anything in the movies we got 10 years ago. I
think probably if it had been known, then they might have hammed up a scene a bit more within those original films. However, I think you can kind of like backwards retcon it to be like, why is he so obsessed with this girl from District 12 who is very similar kind of, is almost the anti Lucy Gray Baird, like she's the warrior fighter who has to become an entertainer, whereas Lucy Baird is the entertainer who has to become a fighter kind of thing. So, why, and I think that, the whole thing of like the last thing she says to him is like, I'm off to go find some Katniss. And then Katniss pops up 65 years later. I don't know.
It's very common. It's just like, it's what the potato is to Ireland, it's you're gonna come across potato. At some point.
And obviously his obsession with Katniss is kind of seems in those films almost to do more with the fact that he kind of realizes she is like this spark of a rebellion. And he's almost as impressed with her as he is kind of fearful of her. But I think you could definitely like backwards retcon that and be like, oh, there was more going on with Snow than we knew. And I think
it's an interesting.
It doesn't feel like it's been rewritten too much. You know what I mean?
I think it's really interesting the way they kind of subvert your expectations with the Lucy Gray character in a way, because I kind of went into this thinking I was going to get another Katniss And also I find it just kind of interesting being her, just kind of being an ordinary person, sort of just not, trying to make a moral high point at any point in this competition. She literally is just trying to survive and get her way through this. And although she's sympathetic towards people she meets along the way, she's very sympathetic, or empathetic, should I say. She's just like a normal person thrown in this situation. So I quite enjoyed that it wasn't like this person's going to like lead something. She's going to like, be defiant or anything. All those tropes that we're used to seeing in YA. It was quite fun just to have somebody who was just kind of caught this guy's eye, but she also, it was just love, this sort of romantic jest between them two, and I found that to be the more interesting part of the story, and it was cool to have a little something different to the Hunger Games franchise.
Definitely, and gave you a little bit more history about how they came about, and again in a kind of very kind of downer way of Peter Dinklage explaining that he came up with the Hunger Games almost whilst he was drunk as a joke, and then he has to live with the burden of the fact that people took it as
a good
thing
idea
to do.
Yeah,
You're right, man. He's like, whoa,
I didn't mean it.
Don't kill kids, man. What the hell? I'm drunk.
What is he drinking in that little vial?
Oh, I don't know. I can't remember what color it was.
It's white. It was just clear.
White Russians.
What are they drinking in the capital?
White
Katniss juice.
Katniss juice.
Fermented Katniss. I think that's the Hunger Games, Alex. I'm glad I revisited the franchise.
Yeah.
And, I think it definitely. I'm glad I went back and watched the old ones first, because I got something new out of certainly the latter two films that I didn't really remember or didn't necessarily get out the first time, and also got my excitement up for Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which I think I could recommend to people. I think it's quite an enjoyable film, regardless of if you've seen the series or not. I think it helps, but yeah, this is very enjoyable.
Yeah, no, good fun. Maybe a little bit too long, but
definitely too long. Shave 20 minutes.
Happy to be back in that world, and I don't know if they wanted to do more. I'd
be up for it still.
I'd happily watch them. Yeah.
That brings us back to BFI. Have we done BFI Top 100 for, I don't know how many weeks it's been now, or how many episodes? There's been a few, right?
Yeah, well, we've had a bit of a break in between as well, haven't we? So we had our Christmas episode, and then we had our year in review episode. But in between that time, we had 2 or 3 weeks off for Christmas as well. So it feels like it's been a while, but maybe for our listeners, it's been like 2 episodes. But it is the series where we look at the blind spots that you and I both have from the Top 100 Greatest Films of All Time list from BFI's Sight and Sound magazine.
It's not even fair to call them blind spots. I think blind spots kind of relates to if they're like a handful that we didn't get right.
All right.
We are going through the majority of this list. I think
we can't change it now because we've been saying blind spots the whole time. All right.
Oh, no. I feel richer for this experience so far, even though we've got a little bit way to go. But we are definitely going to get to number one. I think this year. I think if we use the same sort of track record as we did last year in terms of getting through these, we'll definitely get there. And I think this episode is really special because, regardless of what we're going to talk about in regards to this film, I think Barry Lyndon by Stanley Kubrick was a major blind spot for us both. A bit of a milestone on this journey that we were both really, really excited to get towards.
Yes. A Kubrick film neither of us had seen, despite liking majority
every
of
Kubrick film so far. I mean, I'm a little bit like jury's still out on me for Clockwork Orange. I just need to revisit it. I just haven't returned it. I watched it as an 18-year-old a couple of times, where perhaps my feelings towards it would be a lot more matured and a different perspective on it. I like to think so anyway. But yeah, apart from that, I mean, I watch The Shining like every year. Like most
that has
people.
Just reminded me, I've not seen A Clockwork Orange.
You haven't seen Clockwork Orange?
Actually, I think my favorite is Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah, as a piece of satire, it's yeah, people absolutely love that film to death. I need to revisit that one also because I've also around 18 when I seen that. So, but yeah, I mean, like it's 2001: A Space Odyssey, Full Metal Jacket. Everybody knows Kubrick, and everybody
Hmm.
has as either most people. I think even people who aren't major film fans are better than probably myself or yourself and have completed his filmography because he has his fanboys out there, like
Mm.
in terms of what Christopher Nolan would have now. Kubrick still has that as a fan base. So and it's clear to see the guy was a genius, and he was very obviously particular, and it's all out there. Everybody's read this and heard this millions of times. Why he was sort of a difficult perfectionist to work with and
Hmm.
for. There's been numerous documentaries out about that as well. But I was really excited about Barry Lyndon because this is the first sort of film I'd seen that felt like a real major departure from his other works. In terms of like what it's going for, like a big what Scorsese did with Age of Innocence, for example, we're going for against type for this director.
Yes, but still maintaining the sensibilities of if I'm doing anything, I'm doing the big epic version of it.
Yes, I think he originally was penned to do the Napoleon movie,
Yes.
and then 1970 Waterloo came out, and it was a disaster. And then the financiers were just
Yeah.
like, "We're not going for this anymore,"
Yeah. This
which would have
doesn't.
been interesting. I would have loved to see
Oh
Kubrick's
man, his
Waterloo.
Napoleon would have rocked.
Yeah,
Watching
yeah.
this, I was like, oh god, I would have loved to have seen his
Oh
Napoleon.
no, I think we got a good trade off here. To be honest, I don't
I
know.
mean, this is great, but I did think like I'd love to. I just still like on top of this, I would have loved to have seen his Napoleon.
Okay, well, let's get stuck into it. So Barry Lyndon, I wasn't really actually familiar with the story or the fact that this was based on a book, a 19th century novel, despite being set in the late 18th century in England, about the titular Barry Lyndon, who's this sort of Irish rogue, kind of works and diddles his way through life and comes against chances of luck and chances of misfortune to kind of work his way up the ranks of the English aristocracy. So it's this quite sort of like it's quite insular at times, but it is an epic. It's just such a movie where it's 3 hours 5 minutes long,
Mm,
but by the end of the movie, you're like, oh my god, how did we get to this point? Like it does
mm,
take you on a wild journey, um,
definitely.
which is crazy. And the movie has a lot of things to say about fate or how much control we actually do have of our own fate. Is it for our own acts or our pleasures, our misfortunes, or is it something that couldn't be helped all along? And I think it's something the movie gives you plenty of room to ponder these ideas, but also just being a really kind of entertaining, gorgeous costume
Oh
drama,
my god.
gorgeous film.
In like this film looks incredible. Like every frame of this film
Did you
looks
watch the
like a
Criterion copy like I did as well?
yes. It looks like a
Stunning.
painting on a
Yeah.
wall.
The framing that Kubrick uses on like riverbanks where he obviously spent like the whole day just chartering these rivers to like frame a stately home or a castle in the distance, that where you'd find the perfect amalgamation of leaves just to like vignette a couple in the distance or a home, and with the lighting at the perfect time of day, everything looks like you said, it's painterly, it's gorgeous to
Yeah.
look at.
Even internally, like I don't know, just the way he frames
Hmm.
certain positions of like rooms with chairs and tables and people lying there and just like big blank walls behind them. You're just like I feel like if I just screenshotted this, I like do I vaguely remember this as a painting in a museum somewhere? It's just like
Yeah.
insane some of the stuff, and I think there's a lot of I did go a little bit behind the scenes, but I can't remember exactly what it is. But cameras that might have been loaned from NASA to be able to film in low light for the candlelight scenes and stuff like that, like
Yeah.
all kinds of crazy
That's that's a
technical
mental.
stuff going on to really achieve kind of a really beautiful film.
Well, I when I went up looking up the filming locations of this film, obviously it's mostly shot in various places all across England and Ireland. I was looking at there's like 80 to 90 filming locations for this film. I've never seen such an extensive list of locations for principal photography. It is insane. The production. I imagine there are plenty of anecdotes that must have come from the cast and crew working with Kubrick on such a perfectionist vision. I mean, this movie is, I think, regardless of how you feel about the story, and I really love the story, and I love all the performances in this. It is a masterclass in directing and rhythm, tone. Everything just kind of edits and melds well together, and scenes just kind of roll into the next. And it's so lyrical in that way. I'm most interested to talk to you about Ryan O'Neal as the main performance as Redmond Barry, or Barry Lyndon.
The world's most difficult director working with potentially the world's most difficult actor. Well, actually, as an actor, I don't think he was too difficult, but as a human being, he is not great. And I know he died recently, so I don't want to speak too ill.
He died in December, didn't he?
Yes, only a few weeks ago. So, but not a great guy by all accounts.
But as a performance, what did you?
Yes, as a performance. Sorry, Chris.
So you liked the performance?
Yes, yeah, I think I do because it works in terms of. I mean, I'm not being like, hand this guy an Oscar, he's so good, but it works in the terms of he plays a buffoon really, really well. In terms, like, he's kind of smart,
with a lot of conviction, like a lot of personal conviction.
Yeah, he's so stupid, but he's able to fall on like really kind of good fortune and luck. Sometimes through using his stupidity.
Well, his life is a game of Dungeons and Dragons where he just is rolling the dice from scene to scene, and and whether he gets robbed by highwaymen or if he steals an officer's coat, he makes choices.
It's really good because it kind of works in the way of like, you don't particularly like him, but there is an inkling of empathy for him at times, just because you're like, how stupid can you be?
Yeah.
Somebody needs to look after this guy.
I think stupidity is a real major theme of this. I thought this was almost sort of like a black comedy in a way. I find the movie quite funny, a lot way through, but just because it's not only poking fun at Barry Lyndon as, kind of an aimless sort of fellow, but also the world of 18th century England or Europe in general. The fact that we have duels to fight over, marrying a lady that we just met like hours ago, to all of these sort of foppish dinners and parties where these people live in these big, empty, vast spaces and just entertain themselves and spend their money. And their lives are just so empty and they're just voids of themselves. And, we've seen a few films, I think. I was thinking a lot about with the film we talked about the last year, the beginning of the BFI list,
The Leopard.
The Leopard. It reminded me a lot of The Leopard in that way, where it kind of how it explores people in these places in aristocracy and how they kind of mosey around for their lives until eventually something misfortunate happens, someone dies or someone stabs somebody else, and then their lives come crumbling down. It's such on a pedestal, their lifestyles, but they're so fickle and fragile at the same time. I thought it was really entertaining, and I thought it's a very linear story. I mean, you get the point pretty early on in this film, but the journey is just so fascinating, and you're just in the presence of some of the most elaborate costuming and set designs and cinematography and some of the performance. I think about Lady Lyndon and Marissa Berenson when she first enters the frame, how Kubrick shoots her, especially you're talking about these dark nighttime scenes when she's on the balcony on that first scene, and Barry Lyndon approaches her and seduces her on the balcony, and the way that's shot, just baking in moonlight, and it's just this. It's hard not to fall into this movie.
It is good. What did you think of Ryan O'Neal's accent, Chris, as a fellow Irishman?
Yeah, well, of course, it is what it is. Like I said, it's not Tom Cruise and Far and Away. Nothing is as bad as that. But yeah, it's not great. But I think his performance is good enough, because I think he is so benign in this movie. He is so, he's not the most emotive person in the world, apart from like whenever he wants to beat the shit out of somebody. But it really sneaks up on you, that performance, I think, by the closing moments whenever he has sort of laced his way into Lady Lyndon's life and inherited her home, her son, who was born to the previous Mr. Lyndon, who unfortunately suffered to gout and God knows what else. Whenever he inherits this new life, it's very clear that he's a bit of a bastard, and it kind of sneaks up on you
Mm,
very, very quickly. That you were always, I was always indifferent to him, but then I
yes.
felt something for him all of a sudden,
Yeah.
and those feelings were really complex. And
Yeah.
I think he does that really, 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 really
Yeah.
well.
Because at the start, you're a bit more on his side at the very start because it almost feels like
Yeah, he's an Irish rogue, he's
a
yeah,
stupid but romantic gesture for
and he
the
does
hand of his
things.
cousin.
Yeah, and he acts on things, and that's quite
Yes.
entertaining to watch as a viewer, seeing somebody who makes decisions regardless of whether they're good for others or himself or not.
Yeah, doesn't really
Um,
think of the consequences, but just feels like it's the right thing to do.
but it also is like it's so different to the time that we live in now in 2024, where you have to be so precise about any decision you make because the systems in which we live our lives through, really dictate how we make choices. But back then,
Mm,
you could be so risky, or it would cost you your life, but if you got away with it, you kind of spoiled the riches a little bit.
yes.
There are lots of loopholes that you couldn't navigate today. So I think the main character in this film is the time setting
Yeah.
and England itself and all the people that inhabit it. Um, and I think it's probably it is one of the greatest costume dramas I have ever seen. I was so taken by it, and it did not disappoint me. I watched it from the comfort of my home. It's 185 minutes. I didn't get up to get myself a drink, didn't pause the movie. I was so engulfed in this world. And the intensity of the final duel scenes in this movie really, even though it kind of ends in
Oh
kind of a funny,
yeah.
darkly comical way, um, we're really kind of profound. I think Lord Bullington, that sort of dynamic, that hatred he has for Barry Lyndon, and that final duel that comes where he's coming to attest his satisfaction and gain his satisfaction for being wronged by Barry years ago, and comes back for a final duel, and that is really, I think he plays that role really, really well. Um, so yeah, I found all that really, really cathartic, and I thought him. It's all about fathers as well, because Barry Lyndon never really had a dad. Is the first shot of the film is his dad dying in a duel,
Mm,
which is quite, it's this sort of devastating irony to it. And he kind of navigates this world, and you see him sort of like adopting father figures, whether it's the Irish Chevalier,
mm,
guy, or whether it's the Irish captain that he meets early in the film. He gets shot in the gut,
yep.
and also when he finally bears a son, a different son with Lady Lyndon, he outpours all this sort of inward love that he never received for this child, and I thought that's the most human thing we saw out of this character this whole way through. Um, yeah, I thought he was more interesting, and I think it was interesting to cast someone like Ryan O'Neal, who perhaps on pen and paper would have been an odd choice, but I think because he's so benign, it works brilliantly.
Wasn't it something like it was between him and Robert Redford?
Oh, really?
I
Okay.
believe so. Which
I
might
think
have
this is the right
changed.
choice. I mean, I love Robert Redford, but I don't know. He's too strong and too.
I don't think
Uh,
he would have been the buffoon.
no, he would have been the hero. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
But you're right, that final duel, very, very well done, very kind of powerful and tense, despite I shoot first, now you shoot second, and then we keep going and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
And they use, obviously, the music in this is a standout as well.
mm,
We all know, anyone who's seen Clockwork Orange as well will know that piece of music is so infamous. And he uses it basically as the backbone for this whole film. The score, I mean, won the Oscar for best score. Everybody will know it from the opening scene of Clockwork Orange, but it's this sort of driving drum beat that lasts for it the whole final duel that is so repetitive, but it drives the whole movie forward, and it's still stuck in my head. No, I'm going to be like humming this off
uh,
camera. But no, it was awesome to see, and yeah, I think I will come back to this movie years to come. I think I was so taken by it, and I think it's up there. I can see why people revere Barry Lyndon so much.
Yeah, I did really like it. I think I found the opening and the first and the last act to be the best of the film. I think it kind of, my interest varied in the middle a little bit with different things. Like I maybe wasn't as interested in some of the the gambling and trying to take different titles and stuff like that. But as soon as we got Lord Bullingdon involved, and I thought the kind of relationship of his arch nemesis now being this young child, I was kind of starting to get back into it and stuff. And yeah, I just think my interest wavered a little in the middle, but for the most part, this is a really great film and absolutely gorgeous.
It is stunning. Yeah, you could play this movie without the sound, and it would still kind of work to some point. Yeah, I can completely see why it's on the list. Very deservingly so. Maybe I liked it a little bit more than you, Alex, but you know me, I'm a sucker for costume drama. if they're done well, not any old costume drama, because they can be pretty bad. They can be pretty dull as dishwater sometimes, but this has the Kubrick flair that I wanted to see. It was near damn perfect, I thought.
It was good. It was good. Very good.
it was good.
I maybe don't share your absolute love of it, but I do really, really like it. I can't critique it. I don't think it's a bad film in the slightest.
I think a lot of it does come down to genre preference as well. I think there is a little element of that.
Yeah, you like period dramas more than I do, don't you?
Yeah, but I am sitting opposite somebody who one of their favorite films of all time is Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
It's true.
Which I'm a big fan of also, but you really love that movie.
I really do. I really do.
So maybe that argument's not true.
Maybe not.
What's next on the list, Alex? Are we going to be discussing BFI next week, or are we?
I think we are.
We are indeed.
Or are we? Because I know next week we are. So the idea for next week is we're going to discuss Poor Things and The Holdovers. And then, I'm going to try watch the Battle of Algiers. Are you going to have enough time, Chris?
I will look forward to discussing that with you. I haven't watched it yet. It sounds like I've watched it already from the sound of my tone, but I have not. We'll find time to squeeze that in also, because we like to make sure our episodes are jam-packed.
Absolutely. Obviously, if The Holdovers and Poor Things take up too much time, we'll skip. But we will get to the Battle of Algiers next on our BFI Sight and Sound list. Chris, before we close the episode, where have I hidden my handkerchief?
I don't know. Where is it?
Sorry, that isn't actually what I wanted to ask. I think I took you.
I was reenacting what he says at the. That's. He's so coy.
It is quite funny. I do love that scene. That is a really funny way to start a film. I really did enjoy that. Yeah. No, I wanted to actually give a shout out to my mum. So it is my birthday tomorrow as of recording, but yesterday as of the episode dropping, and my mum made me a birthday cake, which was in a recreation of the Film Angle logo, and it looks incredible, and I'll make sure to drop it on the Instagram. So more than likely, if you're listening to this, it might already be there, or I will upload it soon.
I can vouch I have seen this cake in question, and it looks amazing. Sue, if you're listening, you did an amazing job. When I first saw the photo of the cake, I actually just thought it was our graphic art, and it wasn't until I actually zoomed in. I was like, "Oh, it's a cake! That is amazing!"
Yeah.
So very, very talented.
I don't know how they found icing with the right hex color.
It is exactly the right tone and hue, isn't it? It's perfect.
I know my dad helped out as well with the decorating, so
they're just perfectionists, aren't they?
Yep. But it looks good. It also tastes very good, and I wish you were a little closer, Chris, because you could have shared in it. But it does taste great as well. There's a coffee cake underneath of your cakes.
Even better.
Lovely. Very happy.
Because we always have a coffee on the Film Angle, so that makes sense.
Yes, love it.
If it's not beer, it's coffee.
We're big coffee snobs over here, so if a coffee wants to sponsor us, we will shout out your coffee and drink it at the same time.
Not instant though. No.
Oh yeah.
Or
No, we
coffee
are
bags, something
snobs,
like coffee,
people.
tea bag stuff, or
Beans,
beans.
beans,
Beans. We'll settle for
beans.
ground. We'll settle for ground.
Yeah. But the freshest is beans, and we'll grind it ourselves.
All right, I think that calls it until we descend into silliness. Alex, happy birthday for tomorrow.
Oh, thank you very much, Chris. Thank you.
On behalf of one half of the film angle. Love you.
Thank you. Oh, I love you too.
That does it for this week's episode, guys. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, on TikTok. If you're listening, you're probably listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, but you can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts from. That's the show for this week. I've been Chris.
And I'm Alex.
See you later.
Goodbye and good night.